Hey everyone. Recently, sh0e's made a video response regarding the topic of MAPs and their acceptance into like SJWs and be part of the LGBT, everything like that. And somebody had actually made a response to her video, and she responded to that video. Now, anybody who watched only her video came away with the impression that this guy was himself a pedophile, that he was defending pedophilia. But it turns out that's a bunch of bullshit. And she has actually edited it in such a way that a person would get that impression. And you can go ahead and go to his channel and you can look at the actual videos. And he actually uploaded a second response to a response to her response to him that shows this very clearly within the first few minutes. And what makes this so outrageous is that when you lay it all out and you're really looking at it, there's no way, in my opinion, that sh0e's did this just innocently. That she was, just going through his video and she was just clipping out only the things that were the most relevant to just make a quick video, right? She actually gives you the impression that she's responding to the entire video because she's responding to so many things that aren't relevant and commenting about how irrelevant it is. But more importantly, she removes tiny clips that set up important contextualization. There are people who believe he's a pedophile because at one point he uses we. In that particular moment, though, he's speaking, he says deliberately, this is what pedophiles would say or what they would think, and he's speaking in their voice. And it's very obvious if you're watching his video unedited that that's what he's saying. And what's crazy is sh0e's includes like parts leading right up to where he clarifies this and then immediately after. Like she's cut out just the points that provide that important contextual clues. And there's other parts of it too where she's just taking parts of what he's saying out of context in order to create this overall impression. And so calling someone a pedophile is like bad enough, especially when you're just selectively taking these clips. And when we have all this evidence that when you look at his video compared to hers, it seems very obvious she's done this deliberately. But even more so, that on the topic they're discussing, the fact that pedophilia is stigmatized is a central theme of the entire discussion. So she's doing this whilst being aware of what the implications of falsely calling someone a pedophile is. So on so many levels, this is completely just low and sleazy from sh0e's perspective. She absolutely owes this guy an apology. Every single one of her followers who's gone to his videos to, tell him to kill himself and post all these things as comments, they all owe him an apology as well. And the way that I stumbled upon this was I had first watched sh0e's video, just kind of like light entertainment, and I didn't really look much into it further than that. Because there wasn't much of a debate there. There really wasn't a lot of interesting substance to the video. It was just kind of like a clickbaity sort of thing. But when I was looking into videos on geo-libertarianism, one of Omnizoa's videos had come up in the feed. And as I was watching it, I realized, oh, wait, I recognize this avatar. This is that guy that sh0e responded to. And then I thought, well, is this guy actually like a pedophile? Is this guy actually, is that actually what he thinks? And it didn't take me long to find him denying it, to find him posting videos where he had clarified everything and where he had exposed exactly what I've explained here. So every single one of these fans of sh0e's who are going to mob his videos, they've done absolutely no effort at all to get his side of the story and to figure out what's actually going on. And the reason I wanted to make a video about it is, not just expose sh0e's, although that is important. She definitely owes him an apology, and I'm definitely, for whatever it's worth, I'm not watching any more of her videos, and she definitely needs to apologize for it. It's completely unfair. Now he does depict himself in ways that are kind of smarmy, and sometimes his tone doesn't come off in the most charismatic way, but that shouldn't be grounds to call someone a pedophile. I don't know why I have to say this, but I think there's also a larger message or a larger takeaway from this, which is just don't be part of this fucking stupid, just frothing at the mouth, pitchfork wielding mob. And I was looking at this to see if anybody else had come to Omnizoa's defense. And what I found were just people riding sh0e's shoestrings. And what's crazy about this particular guy, this like noodle guy, or noodle whatever the fuck, he's responding to Omnizoa's second video. The second video opens by explaining exactly how sh0e had taken him out of context and shows exactly how she manipulated. It's very clear cut. Yet he just ignores all of that. Not only does he not respond to it, but he's responding to the rest of the bits of it as though that part of it didn't even happen. And that almost, it makes me even more livid that someone's that stupid. And then it got even worse. It gets even worse because it turns out he has a conversation with Omnizoa. They have this discussion, right? It's not a debate, it's a discussion. And I'm listening to it, and he starts off with this 3 minutes of just introductory padding of it, talking about how, like, you know, all this disavow, blah, blah, just because I'm talking to this guy doesn't mean I like pedophiles, which is just a soft way of implying, like, I think this guy is defending pedophiles, right? He's setting this up in order to justify the fact that he didn't take seriously any of the points he's made, and he completely missed this really egregious thing that sh0e has done. Because, you know, she's got a channel with 1 million subscribers. This guy is like 500. You know, it's definitely punching down, but she knows that she's depicting him as a pedophile. She knows that she's done this, and I think she did it deliberately and maliciously for clicks. I don't think it's negligent. I don't think that it's just like she was looking through the video and just responded to a few things here and there and it just happened to come out that way. I don't believe that. And I think that anybody who looks at all the videos in question is going to see exactly what I'm seeing. And what's so surreal to me about this whole thing is that it just shows how few people, you know, because you have like her 1 million subs and it's what, like, I don't know, 10% or whatever tiny fraction of them actually watch videos. And then whatever tiny fraction of those actually click like or dislike or comment. And then whatever tiny fraction of those people actually bother to go to Omnizoa's channel. And then like an even tinier fraction of those people bother to actually watch any of his videos and figure out what actually happened. And basically it looks like it just filters down to like a dozen people who actually followed this to its conclusion and realized, sh0e, what are you doing? You know, that's you owe this guy an apology. You really do. If you're gonna have any redemption on this whatsoever, you owe him an apology. But this noodle guy is responding to a video that clarifies the whole situation and completely ignoring the clarification and then doubling down on it, fucking gaslighting, acting like, oh, I'm going to bring you on here. We're going to have this conversation because you said maybe there were things that I missed. And I say listen to that conversation because Omnizoa pushes that guy's shit in. It's so obvious. He has to calmly explain to him how like categories work, how just basic things. And like, let's just go through some of it. Let's just look at some of this. It's outrageous. I'm losing my goddamn mind. I'm turning into a crazy person.
I wanted to include this forward before the discussion begins because I really wanted to make sure that people did not conflate my beliefs with his. I still believe that pedophilia, in the sense of attraction to children, is disgusting, sick, and should be shamed. I still believe that pedophiles who have acted in sex crimes such as coercing a child into sexual acts, kitty diddling, or child molestation, whatever you want to call it, should be severely punished. I still believe that the MAP community is disgusting and as a whole should not exist because it simply, in my eyes, breeds pedo sentiments and validates pedophiles, right? Just because I spoke to a person with these beliefs does not mean that now I'm an ally to their cause, nor do I have any more sympathy for these people.
Do you see what I mean? Like, the way he's framed this is he's listed everything and he's just implied right here that Omnizoa has these beliefs. I'm also going to include at the end of this video a fairly long excerpt from an interview that Benjamin Boyce did with Dr. Cantor, because I think that in that conversation they address every single important topic that comes up in sh0e's video, in Omnizoa's video, in Noodle Boy's video, and everyone who's discussing this topic, they hit upon everything. And that's a conversation with an actual sexologist with actual interesting things to say. So I think that if you want to get at least the YouTube education in this, the cream of the crop that YouTube can offer you for free, I say go and watch that. So I'm not going to waste any time trying to reinvent the wheel. I just defer to that. And I'm going to be including a fairly large segment of it at the end because I think that it really does wrap a lot of this up.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people with unusual sexual interests can keep themselves, behaving, expressing only typical sexual interests unless they're under an enormous amount of stress. When they're feeling under those conditions, that's when they, really, they're more likely to, exactly. Which suggests entirely the opposite of how we work with sex offenders. If we know nothing from criminology in general, what we do know is that people do the most desperate things when they feel the most desperate. But all we ever do with sex offenders is give them reasons to be more desperate. Rather than integrating them into society, we reject them from it. And as I say, basic social psychology 101. A person with nothing to lose acts like a person with nothing to lose, and all we do is make sure they have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
But mostly what I want to focus on is this mob justice mentality and the fucking gaslighting that this guy is doing in order to justify himself after the fact.
So my hopes in, actually engaging a discussion with you is to obviously clear up those misunderstood concepts and, maybe come into some kind of mutual agreement on to some degree, Sure. I feel like we both have very opposing views on this issue, but I feel like common ground can still be found at some point.
So again, he's reinforcing this implication that Omnizoa supports pedophilia somehow. That or he's just actually completely ignorant of what his views actually are. Even though earlier on in this video he clarified that he understands that Omnizoa does not support pedophilia. But again, he's going to keep framing it this way. And it's one of my pet peeves is people who just had conversations with this whole aura of, I'm going to make it a discussion, we're going to be mutually respectful, and I understand that you have views and I have views and we disagree, but we can really work it out and kumbaya over it, even though we disagree. I just like people who talk that way, I don't know if it's like they're dumb or they need to pad everything with this kinds of emotional manipulation. It's just so stupid and I hate it.
I think one of the key things it was a little bit irresponsible to leave out of your video is actually how I opened the video, specifically rebutting her claim that she was making a video about being against diddling kids, and somehow I objected to that when I don't object to that. And that was a gross misrepresentation, and the fact that she is misrepresenting people in these videos is part of my objection to her.
Yeah. Well,
but you jumped over that and went straight to the second point after that, which I don't think is a very good way of encapsulating what my issues are with her video.
All right.
And mic drop. That's the point. That's the thing to take away. But watch how this guy squirms his way out of it.
Well, I on that case, I agree. I feel like sh0e did, misrepresent you as a person in her response video.
See that? He agrees. And that was a horrible thing for sh0e to do. But is he going to admit that? Is he going to say, and I'm sorry that I also did that? I'm sorry that I was literally on top of and editing the second video that makes that explicit and I chose to skip that over. No. He's going to throw sh0e under the bus all of a sudden. He was white knighting for in all of his comment sections and shit. But now all of a sudden, no, that was a horrible thing for sh0e to do. I totally agree because I'm being totally reasonable and respectful right now.
You did, make it seem as if you were a pedophile yourself, which you claim to not be. And I believe you on that. However, I feel like there's a lot of kind of, trying to like, you know, just all right. So you weren't, you know, objecting to the idea that it was bad to diddle kids, okay?
Yeah.
But and you believe that there was a misrepresentative kind of attitude towards the topic of maps and pedophiles.
Man, just savor that floundering. He's desperately calculating in his brain how can he get away from the fact that he just slandered this guy as a pedophile on completely baseless accusations. Just watch what he tries to come up with. It's so pathetic.
But
Yeah.
based on obviously you, to your knowledge, I've been on your Discord server as well, right? And I've spoken to a few people who identify as maps themselves, and some of them, obviously, I won't name any names just for the sake of privacy, and I don't believe in doxing or anything. But example maps, I found examples of maps literally supporting the idea of number one, abolishing the age of consent laws.
Yes.
You
Now
know,
let me just jump on that right away. I am
Yep.
entirely aware and will fully admit that there are people on my Discord server who hold much more fringe views on this topic than I do. People
Yes.
are obviously very quick to conflate me with them. But if there are people who are in my Discord server who want to abolish age of consent, or, and I don't even think that's that crazy of a view, but more specifically wants to endorse or wants to legalize having sex with kids, that's their view to have. You can have that debate with them, but I'm not debating that. I don't support that. I don't defend that. All I do defend is their rights to hold that opinion and defend that in a debate.
And I think that's a perfectly reasonable standard. You should let people have dialogue, let people defend their positions. You know, and I don't know, we don't need to listen to any more of this shit because it's so there's nothing here. Like that's the best he can come up with is, "Oh, well, I went guilt by association because someone on your Discord had some views or whatever." You know, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. I'm staring directly into it and I just feel my brain dissolving. So yeah, Shoe on Head is a disgrace. This noodle guy is just just an idiot, and we should just listen to Benjamin Boyce talking to Dr. Cantor because you know this is like the child's play version of the internet. This is like just a bunch of angry people who are finding justifications for their mob justice mentality and they're repackaging it as like, oh, well, I just care about the kids. No, you don't. Fuck you. You absolutely do not because you are not treating this subject seriously at all. You're just doing this sort of moral masturbation of saying, oh, well, it feels good to hunt the witch. Good for you. Good for you. You know? And so much of this is based on a lack of a distinction between people who just have an attraction versus actual offenders. And to me, the idea that you just lump those two groups together as though that difference, the difference of actually committing the act, as though that difference isn't important and doesn't matter. I mean, if you don't think that difference matters, then why do you think pedophilia is a bad thing? Clearly that difference is everything. You know, that's the thing that you ultimately want to prevent. And that's why I think that these kinds of people who just go into this mob, they're not really interested in trying to solve the problem or trying to end it. They just want to find a way to make themselves feel better. And you know, it's just like high school like cafeteria politics. They're just gonna find like the weirdest, most outlandish person and pick on that person. You know, and I just yeah, I don't know what else there's to say. So I'm gonna be concluding with a fairly long segment of this this interview here. And honestly, I really highly recommend listening to the whole thing because it was very fascinating, very interesting. And I didn't want to make it like super duper long because it just kind of feels like stealing. But it's kind of hard to clip it because there's a lot of good stuff here that they're discussing. So anyway, I don't know. Am I totally off base here? Am I being unfair? Should I be more charitable towards Shu? Is it even conceivable that she's been acting in good faith here? I don't know. Am I drawing conclusions that aren't justified? I don't know. Let me know what you think here.
The distinction, the number one rule that I always give, because a lot of people slip over it, is pedophilia is not a synonym for child molestation.
Okay.
That's most people's primary mistake.
Okay.
They think we're talking about one when we're trying to address the other. Now, these are overlapping, and we need to talk about the area of overlap also, but these are dissociable ideas.
Okay.
Pedophilia is the basic sexual interest pattern in children. These are people who are turned on by kids through no fault of their own. They were born that way. It will not change.
It doesn't result from child abuse then?
No, there's no evidence to suggest that. That was the going theory for a very, very long time, but there was never any evidence for it. It just made sense according to the basic psychological theories of those days, but it was just taken for, as a matter of fact, people applied whatever popular psychological theory of that day as the explanation for pedophilia. Freud said it was because of relationships with parents. Skinner said it was because of, random reinforcement contingencies. It's everybody just, but nobody had any evidence for it. Everybody just applied whatever theory they had to those particular behaviors. And then I say, now we have a stack of brain scans. That's that.
Yeah, okay.
So pedophilia is the actual sexual interest pattern born with, by all ways that we can tell, and will not change by, despite everything we have ever tried. Child molestation is the actual crime. That's the harmful behavior that victimizes a child. That's the dangerous person we must deal with, with the judicial system. Okay. Now, once we have, once we have those two separate, now is the question: what do we do with these, and what do we do with these?
Yeah.
Now, because people treat these as synonyms, people are saying just because you were born with this interest, we must throw you as if you committed crimes. No, they didn't commit anything. These people were born with what I can only call a curse. I mean, it's they didn't ask for this. They can't change it. Who can they tell? They can't tell their parents. They can't tell their family. In a lot of cases, they can't tell their therapist because they're afraid of getting reported. Yeah, there's no information on the web about it. There is nothing. As I say, there is nothing for these people. But we expect very specifically that they do not, give in to their motivation and become one of these. Now, the child molesters, as I say, those are the criminals, and there is, they have foregone the rights, they have harmed somebody else. Now, some of them are motivated by pedophilia. They touched a kid because they're attracted to kids. But that's only a minority of them.
That's a minority.
Yes. Most of them are not pedophiles. We call them surrogate offenders. They prefer adults, but they used a kid just to get off with. That's the most common pattern in incest cases. The perpetrator, father, stepfather, whoever, actually prefers adults, but there was a manipulable child in the environment that they took advantage of. And those are, 2/3 to 3/4 of actual abuse cases. Now, this is not to say that, pedophiles are zero risk. That's not true either. But they are a minority of the actual cases of abuse. So as I say, we need to deal with the pedophiles who have never hurt anybody, and we need to, help them. We could have ended up in that position as easily as they could have. But it's different from the people who have actually touched a kid. Yeah. And the people who actually touched a kid, the ones who are pedophiles, I have to help them develop the skills for dealing with their pedophilia for the rest of their lives. The ones who are just general criminals, the ones who are antisocial, generally abusive, sometimes they neglect children, physical abuse, sexual abuse, that's going to be a very different circumstance from, there's no point in teaching him how to deal with pedophilia. He doesn't have pedophilia. He's got other psychological issues which led him to it. Again, from the victim's point of view, makes perfect sense. That doesn't freaking matter.
Yeah, from a political or a victim standpoint, yeah.
Right. But if you actually want to fix the problem, I have to understand where the problem is.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I can do that thick skin. I've been staring at these kinds of cases from now. Oh, the best analogy I have is that somebody in my position has to be like the emergency surgeon in an ER. A family gets wheeled in after a car accident, which is a horrendous, one is dead, others lost limbs. Anybody would lose their mind confronted with that kind of hope. But the surgeon can't. If the surgeons allow themselves to get emotionally involved in what's right in front of them, they can't help the situation.
Yeah.
that unfortunately, the way the political structure and the social media structure works, we just have the masses in hysterics.
Yeah.
That's not going to make a good decision for anybody.
Yeah. So there's the emergence, like it just came on to my radar like a month ago, of this MAP community, or the minor attracted person community. And again, I think there was a tweet that you made. I'm going to botch it quoting it, but you said that the P is something that is related to LGBTQ. Like there's a way of interacting with this community that can actually support them without necessarily celebrating this their behavior, or even not even their behavior, but their orientation. And that's a fraught minefield, because we are not equipped yet socially to understand the difference between celebrating a sexuality, or understanding and accepting the person, or sussing out the difference between the person and that sexuality that would be harmful if it was acted out.
I don't think that's the underlying issue, actually. That is really what I think is so provocative about that idea, is that it forces somebody to ask a much more fundamental question. Again, basic liberal principles. What does it mean to be in that alphabet soup? Right. Does it mean celebrate? Are asexuals celebrating their asexuality? No, they're indifferent. They just don't want people to take for granted what their future lives are going to be. Do people who are intersex want to celebrate that when they were children they needed extra surgery, they weren't sure what's right? Well, so it's perfectly reasonable for anybody in whatever stripe of whatever rainbow to celebrate whatever thing, they go nuts. But is that what puts somebody in the list?
Okay.
Right. It forces somebody to, well, a person who just doesn't want to give their first reactionary statement, which is, of course, a large part of the world. But it means, what exactly does it mean to be listed in whatever group? Now, of course, by virtue of the very bizarre place that I sit in society, I am exposed to every unusual sex practice under the sun, and several, which don't yet have names. So my point of view is, let anybody do whatever absolutely they can think of, dream of, experiment with, so long as they don't step on, the rights or potential harm of anybody else. Now, for some people, that means you can do really just about whatever you want. And the common example today is gay and lesbian. Now, but does that mean unlimited? You can do whatever you want, wherever you want, with whoever you want? No, there are bounds. Somebody bisexual, okay, does that entitle them to cheat on a spouse of one sex with another? No, there are certain limited. And that down we go, the list. All it means for any of the, to me, this is just a list of the sexual minorities for whom we cannot take for granted the usual expectations of what their sexual and romantic lives are going to look like. For some people, they can express a great deal of it. For some people, only a little bit or only in fantasy. And for some people, not at all. Mm-hmm. But my real goal is, once one can get over the emotional reaction and have a rational conversation about P, all the other sexual minorities fall into place. Once we can be rational with them, we can be rational about anybody. I'm just fast forwarding to the end page.
Well, how do we be rational with that? Or conversely, why are we irrational about that?
Why are we irrational? This is now very quickly going to become a discussion about Trump. I mean, I have no expertise about great social norms other than I have a good seat on the sexual part of it. But I think all of this is just just the local manifestation of the great polarization that we're seeing in society in general. I'm accustomed to, 30 years ago, when the only people on listservs and who had email were, people with PhDs, university posts, and so on. And so they got, a disproportionate or privileged amount of the public conversation. Now that absolutely everybody has general access to it, people, with absolutely no education or no background in any idea can seem just as loud or louder. And, they are enormous in number. And it's by now exactly the opposite of how I grew up. It's decision-making by popularity vote. How many retweets, how many likes did you get, rather than the actual merit or evidence behind whatever the statement is.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. So that's how we're irrational. But if we understand, I'm just trying to like get to the last page with you, or like into the footnotes at least. How do we? Is there a way to conceptualize what the pedophile is? And how they should be in society. So, like, what I saw on Twitter was that I think a lot of people got kicked off of Tumblr, and then they appeared on Twitter, and in their bios, the MAP community, minor attracted person community, it was so weird when I saw this, was that I'm attracted to this age group. Like there's this whole identification thing, like, which is just, it's very shocking for people. The majority of people to stumble upon that and say somebody is actually stating out in the open what age they are attracted to. Does that necessarily mean that they're out there looking for that, or they have a collection of porn of that, or what is the purpose of stating that?
No, they're saying they're coming out. To them, the meaning, the interpretation, the way that they're of the ones that I interact with. No, the intent of that is just to put it all out there.
And what's the purpose of coming out?
Exactly the same it is for any other sexual minority, and exactly the way that I would describe anybody anywhere else in the alphabet. That other people should not take for granted that their life is going to look like everybody else's, and to ask, to what extent are there reasonable accommodations can there be made for somebody in a position they didn't ask for, didn't change, and could have just as easily been any of us. Mm-hmm. Now, that does not mean sex with children. And although there are people who do think that we should remove age of consent laws, there do exist, radicals on that side that I will say, can I say mainstream pedophile community? Does that make sense? The group that I like the best, for whom I have the most respect and I support any way I can, are the virtuous pedophiles. Mm-hmm. They are explicit, from mandate and statement on down, always saying they are aware that, they are saddled with a sexual interest pattern they can't act on, that sexually acting out with a child harms the child. They are not going to do that. There do exist other, as I say, radical or extreme groups who do believe that, the rest of us are just interfering with the natural sexuality of children. Different story. That they're deluding themselves at best, psychopathic at worst. They're a different. The virtuous pedophiles, however, we are going to have pedophiles in society, whether we like it or not, and if there were a pill they could take to change, they would. But because we have no such pill and society is going to have such people, these are the ones we want. Mm. Now, the point of coming out is exactly what it was for any sexual minority group, to help others who are looking for no role model, can't tell a therapist, nowhere else to turn to. Let them get in touch with the virtuous pedophiles when some kid figures out that he's attracted to younger. Let him get in touch with the virtuous pedophiles and not the other groups. So, right, so far as I'm concerned, kicking the good groups off,
okay,
helping the bad, it's crazy.
So the function of coming out and the function of connecting with other people who understand it from the inside out, or people who are sympathetic, who like you, who understand it from a clinical position, is to relieve.
I mean, you don't have to collect the brain scans to know what the implications of the science are. I mean, I can tell somebody the science, as we did, in just a couple of sentences, but the logical implications of that doesn't take an expert to see the logical implications of it. It takes somebody willing to take the emotions down a couple of pegs to apply the logic.